Hello, good morning. Our first issue is Resignation of Uttarakhand CM. According to Article 164 of Indian Constitution, non-legislative member can also become Chief Minister, but he or she should get elected to legislature within 6 months. In this particular case, he was Lok Sabha member, elected as CM by the party members. Within 6 months, he has to become the Legislative Assembly member because Uttarakhand is unicameral legislature. That means they don't have legislative council, they have only legislative assembly. That means he should become Legislative Assembly member. Whenever there is any vacancy within 6 months, Election Commission of India should conduct the by-polls according to Section 151A of RPA, Representation of People's Act. But there's one more condition to it. That is, if more than 1 year term is there, then only by-polls are conducted within 6 months. Otherwise, these are not conducted. In this particular case, as there is less than 1 year available for the Uttarakhand's Legislative Assembly term, there is a doubt on whether Election Commission of India conducts the by-polls or not. In this particular case, he has resigned. Now, party members, majority party members might elect another leader, most probably an MLA, as CM. Next issue is Centre has recently asked the state governments to stock limit the pulses. What do we mean by stock limit? Maximum limit of that particular commodity which can be held by anyone. That's called stock limit. Under Essential Commodities Act, stock limits can be imposed. It can be suggested by the centre, but imposition is by the states because it belongs to agriculture. Agriculture is state subject, that's why. Recently, inflation during this pandemic period, it's increasing. In this context, Department of Consumer Affairs has issued an order under removal of licensing requirements, stock limits, movement restrictions order 2021. It has sought the states to impose the stock limits with immediate effect till October 31st. Along with this, there's one more measure taken by the central government to ease the inflation or prices of pulses. That is, it has changed the import policy of pulses. Earlier, import of pulses was allowed only in the restricted cases, but now import can be done by anyone so that it will ease the prices domestically. Next issue is OECD, Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, and G20. OECD G20 framework for global minimum tax. India joined in this particular framework. The group of members, they discuss, they come to a consensus maybe by October. OECD and G20 inclusive framework on base erosion profit shifting. This is the official name. Here, they want to come to a consensus on tax challenges, especially as the economies are becoming more and more digitized. These are facing major challenges, especially in collecting the taxes. In that context, this OECD G20 tax framework, it has two pillars. Pillar one is to share the profits of the companies with the market jurisdictions. Let's say Google is operating in India. It has to share part of the profits in India with the government. So that's one pillar. Second one is imposing global minimum tax. There are certain countries which are called as tax havens. They impose very less tax that attracts MNCs and other foreign companies to invest in their countries. They just go there, they set up the headquarters or a kind of office there, and then they come to India and other countries, markets, they sell there, but then they don't pay taxes here. They say we are paying over there in those countries. That is leading to tax losses. In that context, imposing minimum tax is one of the discussion points under this particular framework. India has joined recently. Next issue is big tech companies. When they enter into financial sector, this might pose some risks. That's the RBI's viewpoint. Recently, RBI has released financial stability report. In that, it has mentioned that firms, these big technology firms like Amazon, Flipkart, Facebook, like this, big firms might become dominant players. They undermine the banks. There are certain concerns. One is operational risks. Two is they are too big to fail. That means even if there are inefficiencies, we can't allow it to fail. So, too big to fail. And then antitrust rules, cyber security, data privacy issues. These are some of the concerns that are expressed by RBI with regard to big technology companies entering into financial services. But then there are other positive outcomes. One, it might increase the efficiency. Two, it leads to financial inclusion. Yes, these are some positives. Next, let us understand the editorials. Vaccine passport issues. Recently, European Union started issuing digital vaccine passports, which are formally called as green passports. India says that it is a discriminatory practice. Why? Because European Union did not recognize any of the vaccines that are now administered in India. Covishield, Covaxin, Sputnik V. These are the vaccines that are sold in India and administered in India. European Union did not recognize any of them. WHO, that is World Health Organization, recognized Covishield. But then European Union did not recognize it. It is said that it is going to be a discriminatory practice. This kind of allowing only certain vaccine takers, that might lead to discrimination of developing countries. Even African Union and others also protested against this particular policy of European Union. In this context, one of the things that India can take is vaccinate as many people as possible, because first Delta variant case found in India. That's why many of the countries are reluctant to allow Indians in non-essential visits. In this context, vaccinating as many people as possible would lessen the travel restrictions. Next issue is internet facility in schools. Ministry of Education recently has released a report which said that only 22% of schools had internet facility before 2020 lockdown. There are digital divides, connectivity divides that are existing. In this context, internet should be considered as an essential services in the schools. Remote learning is possible only with the infrastructure development. In this context, funding is a problem. So, government should take its own funding. Community should be encouraged. Corporates, hardware makers, they all can be encouraged. We have the CSR provision. This can be leveraged over here. That's how the digital divides can be filled in. Next issue is electrification. Recently, Rajasthan's Electricity Regulatory Board has ordered the state government to go for electrifying all the schools with solar power. So recently it said that rural households were electrified from 55% to 96% according to World Bank statistics. In this context, this Rajasthan state regulator's order highlights that there are gaps. In this context, installation of rooftops panels in buildings such as healthcare centers, panchayats office, railways, bus stops, schools, this will reduce the impact on the climate change. This we call as climate proofing. In this context, there are various departments, they all need to coordinate. The renewable energy need to coordinate with Education Ministry. CSR funds that comes under Ministry of Corporate Affairs, they have to coordinate with the rural electrification programs. Likewise, coordination is important now, convergence is important now to electrify all the areas and all the schools and other buildings. Thank you very much. All the very best.